You're looking at your utilization dashboard right now, and it probably says something like 80 to 85% utilization. You think that's good. You think your people are busy, but they're not overloaded. The chances are you're probably wrong, and that number is almost certainly a lie. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what's actually happening in your firm, and why overwork is silently destroying your margins. I'll explain the difference between utilization and realization, and I'll show you where the hidden bench lives in your firm. I'll show you why hiring more people usually makes this problem worse and not better. Let me explain the math that's breaking your business. Utilization is billable hours worked. Simple. Hours logged against client projects, and that's it. So if you've got 10 people and they're each supposed to work 40 hours a week and they're collectively hitting an 82% utilization number, you think you're basically at 328 billable hours per week. And on the surface, that sounds solid. But here's what your dashboard isn't showing you. Firstly, senior people billing junior rates. A director is logging time against a project that should have been staffed by an associate. She's billing at her rate, but the client is only paying the associate rate. The spreadsheet will show you 40 billable hours, but your margin says you just gave away $8,000. Then you've got scope creep and rework that gets logged as client time. A project goes sideways. This team spends 15 hours fixing something it should have taken 5. That rework gets logged as billable time. Utilization goes up, but your margin goes down. And don't even get me started on scope creep, where your staff will do work for a client which they haven't agreed for and then obviously won't pay. Then you've got time that should be non-billable getting buried in billable hours. Internal meetings, process improvement, fixing systems. That work does need to happen, but when time is tight and people are scrambling, they'll log it as client time because they don't want to show that they're underutilized. Your utilization number will go up, but your realization number will collapse, because realization is what's really important. And realization is what the client actually pays for those hours. It's the delta between billable hours and revenue received. And here's the problem. Most firms track utilization rigorously, and they barely track realization at all. So you're optimizing for the wrong metric. Let me tell you what I see in firms doing 85% plus utilization. There's a threshold, and when your people cross it, when they go from being busy to constantly overloaded, something breaks. Firstly, quality collapses. Tired people make mistakes. It's normal. It's human. They take shortcuts. Work gets reviewed and then revised. And that rework isn't just inefficient, it's margin negative. You're paying twice for the same work. Second, attrition goes up. Your best people leave. Not always, but often. In fact, employee churn in professional services ranges between 15 and 25% per annum. In industries that have the highest amount of overwork, for example, advertising and consulting, they're the ones that actually have the highest levels of staff churn. And the people who leave are your best people because they're the ones who can actually find another job quite easily. Unfortunately, they're also the ones that you least can afford to lose because they're the ones that are carrying the heavy load. The consequence is your talent level drops, and then your margin problem gets worse. Thirdly, sales velocity drops. Your senior people don't have time to sell. They're too busy delivering and firefighting. So growth stalls, even though your team is fully utilized. You're hitting a ceiling that you think is a marketing ceiling, but it's actually a capacity ceiling. And fourth, and this is critical, accuracy suffers. Overworked teams don't track time precisely. They're too tired. They round up or down. And worse, they batch log hours at the end of the week instead of in real time. Your data then becomes a guess, and you lose the ability to see which clients are actually profitable and which ones are quietly destroying your margin. Now here's the operator trap. When you realize something's wrong, your instinct is usually to hire. We're overworked, so let's add headcount. But here's what actually happens. When you hire new people into an overloaded organization, they need training, they need onboarding, they need mentorship from your already overloaded senior team. For the first 3 to 6 months, your new hires aren't net positive capacity, they're a cost. So what do? You find things to keep them busy. You assign them to projects that don't quite fit their skill set, or they're not qualified to do at all. You create work that wasn't planned. You shuffle projects around to keep utilization high. The new staff member needs to build something, so they log time to internal projects, training, or client work that's tangential to the real deliverable. They look busy, and the utilization number goes up, but you're not actually making any money. They're on the bench just in disguise. This is what we call the hidden bench. Staff who look busy in your system, but aren't actually billable at the rate you need them to be, or they're not billable at all. In firms with weak capacity visibility, the hidden bench can be anywhere between 8 to 20% of your payroll. So you've got overloaded senior people doing junior work, rework, and untracked admin. You've got a hidden bench, busy but not billing people. And you've got realization that's nowhere near utilization, which is the gap between hours logged and hours paid. And you're still wondering why revenue grew by 25%, but margins stay flat. Look, here's what I've learned after 30 years of working in professional services and a decade of running diagnostics on firms just like yours. Most professional services firms don't actually know their true capacity. They know utilization, they know their headcount, but capacity, the true capacity, the amount of billable margin positive work your team can actually deliver, well, that's invisible in most systems. It's invisible because it requires 3 data streams working together. Number 1, project costing, not theoretical costing, actual hours per project stacked against actual price paid per project. Number 2, they need time tracking that's honest, not padded, not batch logged, real time by category by project, and it actually distinguishes between billable and non-billable work. And number 3, they need margin visibility by client, by project, and by labor grade. Which clients are actually profitable? Which projects are have got hidden costs? And which senior people are being underutilized and which are being burnt out? Without all 3, you're flying blind. And most firms are flying blind. Look, you're heading into Q1 2026, making decisions about hiring, pricing, which clients to pursue, and which projects to bid on. You're planning with utilization data, gut feeling about profitability and hope. Unfortunately, if you plan growth around utilization instead of true capacity, you'll hit another ceiling in about 6 months. You'll hire more people, you'll get busier, and your margins will stay flat or they'll drop. Because it's not a growth problem, it's a visibility problem. But it feels like a growth problem. You try to keep solving it in the same way and getting the same result. Here's what changed for me. I stopped trusting the dashboard. I started asking questions like, what's actually happening underneath these numbers? When I was at Cantor and then later at WPP, we had large complex teams and we had similar issues. Utilization would go up, but margins would stay flat until we actually looked and learnt many of the principles that we use in our profit and capacity diagnostic now. In fact, one of the last things I did before I left WPP was to develop a dashboard or a report that showed the true realization of one of the firms that we were working with. Look, with our profit and capacity diagnostics, in 4 weeks, we will forensically examine your utilization, realization, capacity, and margin data. We'll find the hidden bench. We'll find where your senior people are doing junior work. And we'll find the clients and projects that look good but aren't. We'll build you a 12-month roadmap to fix it without guessing. Most of the time, firms discover they can improve margins by 10 to 15% without adding a single person. It all depends on how much is hidden in the gap between utilization and reality. I guarantee that by the end of week 2 of this diagnostic, you will know more about your true capacity and your real margin leakage and your hidden bench than you've ever known. And if that's not worth the investment, you can stop and you pay nothing further, no risk. If you want to know your real capacity before you start making Q1 hiring and pricing decisions, book a 20-minute profit and capacity briefing with us. We'll confirm if you're the right fit, because a lot of companies are not, and we'll scope out what we'd look at when we'd lock in your diagnostic slot. The link is below. Don't spend another quarter wondering why you're busy but not profitable. Find out instead.